This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale, and here we are, Shane. It's Sweet 16 week, and what do you call it? Butt clenching season? Is that the?
It's been butt clenching season for several weeks. I think it began, at some point during that Iowa State game, and it's continued. And Eric, this is the fourth time since we've relaunched this podcast that we're here to talk about the Sweet 16. And each time after that, we have not had another game to talk about after that one. Hopefully this year will be different. And I'll also note that the Arkansas matchup's kind of fun because I've mentioned to you before just randomly, and I mentioned this to Reggie Geary, who played on the 94 Final Four team. My nephew Zach, who you've met a few times, and we watched the Alamo Bowl together with, was born on April 2nd, 1994, the day that Arizona and Arkansas met in the Final Four. And he's a diehard Arizona Wildcat. He never attended the school, but I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's a U of A fan largely because of my influence. Proud of that. Although I'm sorry for the heartache I've cost him, but that's just kind of cool thing and a chance for I guess I don't know, a little bit of payback 32 years later. Is it 32?
Shane, I hate to tell you about this, but I noticed that today, as we're recording Tuesday night, March 24th, it's the anniversary of two great Arizona Sweet 16 games, which were the Oklahoma State game in 2005, where Salim Stoudemire hit the game winner, and the Derek Williams game in 2011. Unfortunately, that means that 2 days later, on March 26th, Arizona lost to Illinois in the painful choke job, and then they lost to UConn in the painful end of game sequence. And therefore, on March 26th, Arizona plays Arkansas. I know you're a cynic, and we'll find out your picks later in the show. But I just want to throw that out there because we're being honest.
Well, to be fair, we're at the point of the year where every day is going to be the anniversary of a number of Arizona games, both good and bad. So you may call me the cynical type. I'm not overly superstitious, although I have some we could talk about if you want.
All right, well, we're going to discuss on this show what happened in San Diego with Matt Muehlebach, and we're going to bring on Brian Rauf, a national college basketball writer, to make picks with us in the final segment of the show. Simple as that. But first, it is buy or sell, Shane, and here's the thing. We get criticism at times for being overly negative, but these are the way I'm phrasing the questions. So it's not like I just want to point that out before we go. I'm putting things out there. I took a few things from a tweet that you put out the other night.
I noticed that.
We're not going to. I'm not purposely going into this extra negative. No. But we're going to discuss it. Okay.
You put out stuff to make for interesting discussion.
Conversation.
Yeah, right. I get it.
So number one, Shane, Tommy Lloyd was outcoached by Utah State's Jared Calhoun on Sunday night. Buy or sell?
Not necessarily. I'm going to sell it. I think especially as it gets to this point of the year, it's more about the players than it is the coaches. So no, I think Arizona had one of its stinkers that Fran Fraschilla told us about last week, and which is it's kind of crazy to say because they won by a dozen points and they even covered, for goodness sake. There was a great video of someone who recorded watching in the game, just like begging for Arizona to run out the clock in the last few seconds. It wasn't you. It was someone else. So no, I don't think so. I think Utah State's a good team. Arizona kind of lost its way there for a few minutes in the second half, but it's not the first time that's happened this year. They found a way to win, which is something that teams in the past haven't done. So I don't know if it's necessarily fair to say he got outcoached.
I believe actually that he was outcoached by Jared Calhoun. I thought Utah State had a very good game plan to slow Arizona. The fact that they were able to whittle the game down to a 4-point game after being down by 18. 17, I believe, 18, something 18, like that. That was an excellent coaching job by Jared Calhoun, but
Yeah.
Arizona just had much better players. And Braden Burries hit a shot, which I said it at the time. I think a lot of us watching the game said, "Yeah, that's a dagger shot." It put Arizona up by 9. I think it was a 6-point game, and it put them up by 9, if I'm correct. And that was it.
Yeah,
And Arizona covered the spread of 11 and a half points.
they did.
I mean, I understand that it wasn't the greatest second half, but I think the media this week, or not the, and other fans are blowing the Arizona Utah State game out of proportion and not looking at other games such as Arkansas High Point. And we're going to talk about that
Yeah.
later in the show. 'Cause
But
I just it's just that has bugged me this week. Go ahead.
what, and our friend Blair Willis made a great point. He's a great fellow on social media if you're not already following him.
He is.
He made a great point that the Utah State game was actually an example of how this team is built differently from previous Tommy Lloyd coached Arizona teams. Arizona was knocked out of the tournament in previous years, largely because of bad 2-point offense and defense at the same time. They experienced both of those things against Utah State. They were like 10% below their usual 2-point percentage on offense and 16 points below on defense, or the other way around, double digits below in both. And they still won, and they won by double digits. So, it was tenuous down the stretch, but they had it locked up in the last couple minutes. So, I think the two big reasons for that are their front court presence. They nearly out-rebounded Utah State by a 2-1 margin, which is just insane in an NCAA tournament game. And they got to the free throw line a lot. They got to improve their free throw percentage a little bit, but they got there a lot. And I would say now they, two of the most clutch guards in the NCAA are Jaden Bradley and Braden Burries. Those are the key differences between this team and previous iterations. They have a wider margin for error so that when that bad game does come, and hopefully the Utah State game will be the worst game they'll play in this tournament because they're going to have to be better from here on out. But assuming that that's the stinker, I'll be positive that they're going to be okay because they do not have a fatal flaw on this team.
Okay, great. If Jared Calhoun outcoached Tommy Lloyd, what's it matter? Arizona won the game by 12 points. They moved on. I mean, we're all good. We're right where we thought Arizona would be.
Yep.
And, there was a mild stress in the second half. But outside of that,
I say
in
mild,
hindsight,
but yeah.
I mean, it was some serious butt clenching time.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, the game was never within 4 points, in the second half. Or it was never within one possession.
Well, one possession. Yeah. Arizona's flirted with that so many times this year. It's kind of crazy, but it's gotten to the point now, like where even a cynic like me is like, they're probably going to be okay because Jaden Bradley's going to do something great. They're going to make a couple great defensive stops, and they did. And they that's great, not just because they're able to do it, but because of the confidence that gives them going forward that they're going to keep finding ways to win because they almost always have.
Now, I want to give you a couple of things that you said in a tweet, and I think these are really good thoughts, and we'll get more from Muehlebach and more from Brian Rauf later in the show. Number two, I guess, in buy or sell. This team isn't as built for March as we thought, and/or Tommy Lloyd just isn't a very good tournament coach. Buy or sell, either or both of those statements.
Yeah. I put those out there just for discussion points, and people thought it was going to be inflammatory.
You can't help yourself. You can't help yourself.
I was going to say something more negative, like they were lucky to win, and then I came to my senses. That's why I count to 10 or 100 before I make those tweets. But no, I think. Look, I think this time of year, especially this time of year, it's more about the players than the coaches. So I think that Tommy Lloyd. Look, if they get their butt kicked by Arkansas, we're going to have that discussion again, whether people like it or not. But I don't think it's really about. I don't think this game is a reflection on Tommy Lloyd being a poor tournament coach. I don't think that had anything to do with it. And look, there's randomness in the tournament too. Look at Todd Golden, Bill Self, Mark Few. They're all out of the tournament already. Bill Self hasn't made the Sweet 16 for the last 5 years. Of course, he got the championship in the other one, but things kind of even out like that for most teams. And of course, there's the randomness of the tournament too. Florida won its first game of the tournament over a 16 seed by 50 points or something like that. Then they lost their second game. Duke needed to rally in the second half to beat a 16 seed. They were down double digits in the first half, but they did it, and then they won their second game comfortably. So it's always a mistake, I think, to say, well, Arizona barely got by a 9 seed, or they had trouble with a 9 seed, so there's a good chance they'll lose to a 4 seed. College basketball doesn't work that way. This game against Arkansas, whatever happens, is going to have a different feel, a personality, if you will, all of its own on its own. Now, in Arizona's last game, Arkansas's win over High Point, as close as that game was, those games I don't think are going to really factor much into what happens on Thursday night. So, I put those out there. I'm talking about more like what's the narrative going to be. I think that trying to look at the positives, this was a game that Arizona would have probably choked away in previous iterations. This team didn't. This team laid a complete egg for a good 10 minutes in the second half. They had foul trouble. Braden Burris got 2 quick fouls, and they navigated all of it, and they still won by 12 points, and that's the difference. So I don't necessarily think it's either or, but got people talking, and for better or worse.
You love to do that on social media. I'm gonna sell that Tommy Lloyd isn't a very good tournament coach. I think if he loses on Thursday, we can discuss that next week. Yeah. And the fact that this team isn't built for March, that is a complete sell. I'm sorry, but that's
no, I think they're absolutely built for March. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, then your next one that you put, a tenuous game like this will better prepare a great team for tougher opponents down the road. I'm gonna start here, Shane.
Okay.
And I think this is an easy buy. I think you need, you love to reference the Fran Fraschilla, and I'm sure you will when we talk to the guys later in the show, the Fran Fraschilla quote about every team plays 5 amazing games a year, 5 not so great games a year, and 25, up to their ability, right? Something like that.
Yep.
Yeah. Arizona played arguably their worst game of the year against Utah State. I didn't agree necessarily with Tommy Lloyd only playing Dwayne Aristode 3 minutes. I didn't agree with him only playing Tobe Awaka 13 minutes. Yeah. I didn't necessarily love that. With that said, Arizona played their worst game of the year. And they still beat a conference champion, not only in the regular season, but in a conference tournament in a fairly notable conference by 12 points.
And a team that a lot of people thought was underseeded.
Yeah, and they were. That's probably a 7 seed.
Yeah.
And Arizona went and beat them by 12 points.
Yeah.
So anything you want to say, that you played the worst you can play, or right up there, and still found a way to win. I'm obviously encouraged. So yes, I'm going to buy that a game like this will prepare a great team for tougher opponents down the road.
Yeah, I agree. I think this team in particular is very good at not getting complacent. And for number one, they haven't had a chance to in the Big 12. There's no time to get complacent. Unlike in the Pac-12, it was a fight, a dog fight, a rock fight, whatever metaphor you want to use, every single night in the Big 12, especially down the stretch with their schedule and then the 3 games in the Big 12 tournament. But I also think this team is very mature. The seniors they have on the team, and I think the freshmen are mature beyond their years as well. And I think you have a guy in Tommy Lloyd who's good at calming guys down and getting them focused again. So, but no, I think it's good to be able to take a punch in the mouth. They didn't take a knockout blow, but they took a few jabs against Utah State, and take that with them and know that it's none of this is going to be easy. And Arkansas, arguably has the best player in the country this year in college basketball coming in, and at least on offense, and they're going to have to be ready for it. And I hope they hear all the noise about people saying, "Oh, Arkansas is going to be dangerous. They have Darius Yacoff. They have the best player on the court. So Arizona might be in a bit of trouble." Even though I think most people are picking Arizona, but yeah, I think mentally it's a good thing. One thing I'm not crazy about, and I don't know why the NCAA does this, is Arkansas has an extra day to prepare for this game because they played a day earlier. I kind of wish the NCAA didn't do that. I'm not going to use it as an excuse if Arizona doesn't win, but I think mentally, psychologically, this team is going to be as locked in against Arkansas as they have been. Arkansas is going to have to play their best to have a chance to win.
Yeah, I cannot get past the fact that Arkansas struggled with High Point, Shane. Yeah. Who had an impressive, late game win over Wisconsin.
They stole that game from Wisconsin, right?
They did.
Right out from under.
They did. But Arkansas struggled with High Point.
Yeah.
For the majority of that game. I mean, it was not put away until...
It was back and forth, yeah.
Yeah. It was a lot tougher game than Arizona had against Utah State. It was.
And I think this is a classic game where, Arizona is just... They just wear teams down. It kind of reminds me of Jed Fisher's last season, just to use a football analogy, where Arizona would rotate guys in and out on defense, and the other team got tired, and Arizona just kind of outlasted. Arizona outlasts teams. This team outlasts other teams. They're not as spent after 40 minutes as the other team is. These guys get knocked around by Koa Pete and Tobe Awaka and Mo Krivas and even Ivan Karchenkov, who plays outstanding defense. For a good 40 minutes, and I think it takes its toll physically and it takes its toll mentally, no matter how prepared you are. Like Mike Tyson says, everyone has a plan until you get punched in the mouth. I think everyone has a plan against Arizona until they have to go into paint with them for 40 minutes. So I think this matchup, and we'll give our predictions later, but I think this matchup in particular against Arkansas is actually a pretty good one, aside from the fact that, of course, that Arkansas has arguably the best player in the country.
I mean, I would not put him above DeBonsa. I would not put him above Boozer, and I would not put him above Peterson. I think he's the fourth best player in the country. Yeah. And I think that's probably where he'll go in the draft. Probably number 4. And Arizona already faced those other, 2 of those 3 guys, and they faced him a combined 3 times. A-Cup's going to get his points, Shane. A-Cup's probably going to score 30. But if A-Cup scores 30, and Arizona should win this game by double digits. Because I believe that he doesn't play a lick of defense. And I think Arkansas stylistically just, and we'll find out what our experts think. But I really feel I am not as worried about this game as I probably should be. Now, I think Arizona probably played their toughest opponent in terms of style in their bracket in Utah State. Like, the team that would challenge Arizona the most is Utah State. I don't think stylistically Arkansas, Purdue, or Texas match up.
Stylistically, you may be right. Whenever I look at the teams Arizona's playing, I look at the rebounding margin and their 3-point shooting. Arkansas is outstanding in taking the 3, and they're very selective in it, so that's a strength. Rebounding, they're very, very average team. Purdue has the number 1 offense in Ken Palm, but they're down there in defense. So, I think in terms of down low, I think Arizona certainly has the advantage. It's just a matter of whether one of those teams, Arkansas or Purdue, or the other option, which we'll get to in a second, if they, like we talked about a bunch of times, that they go nuts from 3-point range, and that doesn't necessarily mean like going like 15 of 25, but even like 9 of 16 could be the difference. That plus a combination of limiting offensive rebounds, which I think is the tougher thing for most teams against Arizona. But stylistically, Utah State may have been the toughest. Stylistically is one thing, talent is another. I think Arkansas and especially Purdue are just more talented. Purdue has a ton of experience as well. Then you got Texas, and it is just, regardless of whether it happens, it is insane that we are at a point where we could be seeing Arizona versus Sean Miller for the Final Four. I don't think it's going to happen, but just the fact that it is a possibility going into Thursday is insane. Texas.
If Arizona played Sean Miller, Shane, you would have to not be as worried.
Well, You know what? We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But
You're not going to end up crossing that bridge.
But I mentioned it because Arizona matches up very well with Texas as well. So yes, I think in terms of matchups, Utah State might be tougher than any of the 3 possible opponents this week. But in terms of talent, I think 2 of them are certainly better. And in terms of experience, Purdue has an upper hand.
We shall find out. It's going to be wild this weekend, starting on Thursday. But I want to talk about something else, just because we're an Arizona show. North Carolina let go of Hubert Davis. There have been rumors about Bill Self potentially departing this offseason from Kansas. So buy or sell, Shane, we should be worried that Tommy Lloyd, he's going to be a name mentioned. We should be worried that Tommy Lloyd could actually leave Arizona for one of these 2 jobs.
I think you always have to be a little bit worried. But I don't know what motivates him. So I just have to speak to, I think financially, I think Arizona's going to be able to match whatever they offer. If you're just talking prestige, I mean, certainly Kansas and North Carolina are a step up, but Tommy Lloyd's proven that he can build very, very good teams at Arizona. I mean, he's averaged a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament over 5 years. But if he wants a change of pace, he doesn't like an aspect of the athletic department at Arizona, then who knows? So I'm not, that's the least of my worries right now. I get, we could, say like, would you make a deal with the devil where you get a national championship and then Tommy Lloyd leaves the next year? Like would fans take that? But without being on the know, I know he's going to be on the list for just about for all these big jobs.
Sure.
He
Yeah.
just is, which is I
Yeah.
mean, you see that more with a football program than basketball. But Lute Olson turned down Kentucky way back in the day. Tommy Lloyd could turn down either of these schools. I think Desiree would certainly do everything she could to keep him. But if he wants to go, he wants to go. I don't know what's in the man's heart. I'm sure he's not thinking about any of that right now. But I'm not overly concerned about him leaving. But then I wasn't that concerned about Jed Fish leaving either. So you never know.
Yeah, here's the difference. Jed Fish was going to leave at some point in the next couple of years,
Yeah.
and he capitalized on a big run. Let me put it this way. If Tommy Lloyd wins the national championship at Arizona, can we fault him if he went somewhere else?
Uh, I mean, I'm not going to fault someone for going where they want, but I mean, if you can win a national championship at Arizona, why would you bolt for somewhere else
Well,
if,
all right,
if
fair.
it's
But
about the
like,
winning?
I think at this point, I'm not personally worried about it. I know there are rumors of issues between DRF and Tommy. I don't know much about that. I'm not going to speculate on that. Um, I think that obviously there's a possibility that he leaves, but I would say it's closer to zero than 25%. How about that?
That's fair.
I think it. I
Yeah.
would say there's about a my opinion, there's about a 5 to 10% chance that Tommy leaves. He's rebuilding. Now, I think the bigger concern, to be honest, is the roster retention that Arizona is going to have next year because you're going to lose, obviously, you're going to lose Burries, Pete, Bradley, Del Orso, Awaka, Krivas, Karchenkov, and Aristote are all questionable. There is a world where Arizona loses all 8 of those guys and then you have to rebuild from the start. I would be more concerned about that than losing Tommy Lloyd.
Yeah. I've always, the thing I've always thought in the back of my head is that if, even when Mark Few retires, would Tommy just want to go back home essentially? Because not only did he coach at Gonzaga for a long time, but he's from Washington. So that to me would be like, okay, that makes sense. I get it. But like, would he want to go across the country or halfway across the country? I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to look at this objectively. Like Arizona, we've talked about this. Arizona, it's they're in terms of Final Fours, national championships. They're not in the same category as Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, a couple other teams. But in terms of national brand, national recognition, which in the NIL era means as much as anything, Arizona's right up there. They have one of the top 10 national brands in college basketball. When you have a guy like Luka Doncic saying he would have gone to Arizona if he had if he went to college. You see LeBron James wearing U of A sneakers to support his son. I mean, the brand has never been hotter. So if you're worried about that in the NIL era, Arizona's in very good position. So if he wants to leave, it would probably be more for personal reasons that go beyond just the numbers.
I think the other part of this Tommy Lloyd, losing Tommy Lloyd, he has an $11 million buyout.
Yeah.
So if he were to leave, I mean, that's money that Arizona's going to get in that they could use to find another coach or to use for, paying for a roster to get players to come here. So I don't think this would be a situation one way or the other. I don't think it's a situation like the women's basketball team had where they literally had like no players left after Dia left.
Yeah. No, I agree. Look, and he rebuilt after last year too. I mean, they lost. There's a reason why they were ranked outside of the top 10 last year. They were still ranked, but they lost Caleb Love and KJ Lewis and Henry Vasar and Carter Bryant. And so we thought,
I didn't think this team was national championship contender going into this year.
Yeah. Yeah. So
a real one.
Yeah. So he could win here. Yeah. And that's been, I mean, I think regardless of what happens this week, he's built one of the best programs in college basketball, or rebuilt essentially. So the idea of can he win here? I mean, that's not a question to me. If he loses, it's more to me the randomness of the tournament and bad luck that Arizona's had a lot of. So I think it's a matter of whether he just wants to move on from the city, from certain people. I think it comes more down to that than anything.
All right. We'll talk more basketball as the show goes along. We'll make some picks in our final segment. But Shane, it is time for some Shane's standouts.
I want to keep it really simple because we're talking
Mhm.
so much hoops, but I have to mention the men's tennis team. They just reeled in back-to-back top 10 wins in convincing fashion. They had a 4-1 win over number 8 Baylor, and then a sweep of number 2 TCU. So you talk about rebuilding after losing key players. Clancy Shields lost Colton Smith, who one of the best tennis players in the country, if not the best, last year, and is rebuilt. Jay Friend had another outstanding weekend. So we talk about the softball team, obviously taking the series against ASU and some other highlights, but I want to really focus on the men's tennis team because they had an outstanding week. And outside of men's basketball, they may be our best hope for I don't know about a national championship, but maybe a Final Four because they're on a roll again, and Clancy Shields done a great job.
All right. Well, as always, this podcast is brought to you by Harrah's Auction Casino. And hey, Wildcat fans, your new home turf for all things sports is the Caesars Sports Bar at Harrah's Auction Casino. It is now open, and we were out there a few weeks ago. It brings big time sportsbook energy, all your favorite game day grub under one roof, and it's your local home for Caesars Rewards where it pays to play. Caesars Rewards unlocks perks at more than 50 destinations from coast to coast. And at the all-new Caesars Sports Bar, it's always game time. Caesars Rewards plus Caesars Sports Bar. Now that is a winning play, but you'll only find this much sports action at Harrah's Auction Casino. Play for all. And once again, if you missed our shows from the other week, Shane and I were out there on Selection Sunday. We had the food. It's great. We experienced the atmosphere. It's great. We love the casino. We didn't spend as much money in there because we were in the sports bar, but nonetheless, it is a great place. So check it out. Coming up next, it is Matt Muehlebach here on Wildcat Country. Normally we see and hear Matt Muehlebach on our TVs, but instead he was a star of Arizona's social media. If you saw that on the Arizona basketball accounts on X, on Instagram, and probably other places, the great Matt Muehlebach joins us here on Wildcat Country. All right, Matt, you were out in San Diego. You saw what they did, and you saw Utah State give them the game. But I want you to play therapist here to start off. My co-host is just struggling with the fact that Arizona is 2 steps away from the Final Four and something bad has to happen. To me, this team feels different. Please play therapist and tell him why I am right.
Shane, are you on a couch right now? Do you want to lie down?
You know what? I am not cynical, and I can quit whenever I want. Okay.
We're good, man. We're good. Arizona's good. I mean, they not only won, they covered. Like everybody's
They played the worst game of the year and covered.
They did exactly what everybody thought they would do. I mean,
so Fran Fraschilla joined us last week, and he pointed out a couple of times actually when he's joined us, Matt, that I think in a given season, most teams they're going to have like 5 games where they're the 5 stinkers essentially, where they don't play at their usual level, and then 5 games where they play above it. Did Arizona have one of those stinkers against Utah State, or was it just Utah State was that good and maybe underseeded?
well, and I'd add to Franz that in if you're going to win the national title in 6 games, you're going to probably have 1, maybe even 2 that you need to grind out and not play your best. This was one. This was definitely that. I wouldn't call it a stinker.
Yeah, I mean, I'll clarify. They won by 12 points. So people yelling at me in the comments, I understand that.
Yeah. And they were up 18. It was not a good 10 minutes, I'll say that. And I was at the arena and the momentum changed heavily. And you guys have seen that. You guys have seen it in tournaments, and you're just, you're sort of hanging on, and Mariano Rivera, Jaden Bradley, the closer, saved him, and Krivas did too. Krivas had some nice shots. Obviously, Burry's hit the massive 3, and I think to some degree Utah State was probably a little tired after pressing for that most of the second half. They probably ran out of gas, but. It was closer than I thought it would be. The fact that they were up 18, I mean, that was what I expected. But that coach is really good. He's fantastic. I've covered him a number of times. He's fantastic. I told my friends before the game, I said, look out, this guy can coach. Um, and he'll just, I knew he would have him ready. I mean, it's just, look, I told you guys, I've been in those games. It's hard as a one seed. It's hard. You can feel it. You can feel the pressure. You try to play. I thought they definitely played a little tight there for a moment. But give them credit. I think that's going to be one of the six that you look back and say, kind of like 97, you look back on those first two, they didn't play well.
Yeah, yeah. They played a 13 and a 12, and they won both those games by single digits, and they beat 10 seed Providence in overtime. So every game takes on a life of its own. Speaking of coaches, Matt, Arizona's going up against one of the best in John Calipari with Arkansas on Thursday. I tend to think at this point of the season, it's really especially this point of the season, it's less about coaching and more about the players. Guys know what to do. It's just a matter of whether they're built for this kind of moment. What do you think?
I think it's both. I mean, I think if you look at who's like who, like, by the way, watching Patino, he was right in front of me. I mean, that guy is a gangster. He's so fun to watch. And he was very calm throughout the game. I thought he was a very interesting kind of demeanor, you know. To your point, Shane, look, players have to get you to Sweet 16, but why do certain coaches keep getting there? Dean Smith did it 100 years in a row, and Pitino's done it forever. And now you see, just like what do they say about taxes and Michigan State and Izzo, and death and taxes and Izzo in the Sweet 16. It's like I think those coaches have a certain feel for it. And I want to say something too. There were a couple comments nationally about Arizona when they were, in that bad stretch. I think this is really important to say especially as a former player, like two things can be true. Two things can be true. Arizona over the years in the NCAA tournament has had some tough losses and bad losses and embarrassing losses. I'll admit it. Be the first to admit it. The other thing, since 1985, when the tournament went to 64 teams, they call it the modern day, the modern era of the tournament. I looked this up, and I don't know if I have it exactly right, but I think the team that has advanced to the most Sweet 16s is Duke, and it's a pretty big number. In that last, whatever that is, 40 years, Arizona is sixth in the country. Sixth, behind Duke, Carolina, Kansas, Kentucky, and Michigan State. Number six. So the narrative that Arizona just flames out every year and bombs out every year is completely false. They don't. They do, and they have had their moments of embarrassing losses. I'll admit it. But one of the issues that Arizona's been their own enemy is they're just there every single year is why they've had the opportunity to stumble and fall. And they have had those opportunities and they've done it. But they've also been pretty darn successful too. In having really good teams over the year. And they've had, I believe they've had 17 Sweet 16s in that span. And, a team like Nebraska has never won a tournament game until last week. So look, I mean, you're comparing Arizona to the greatest of the great blue bloods. And I think that's a pretty cool comparison. So I think you can say both about Arizona.
So a lot of people, Matt, are saying, or there's a sentiment, and I shouldn't say a lot of people, but there's sentiment online that, hey, Tommy Lloyd has never won, never gotten past the Sweet 16, and Arizona hasn't made the Elite Eight in 11 years, whatever it is. What does that matter going into Thursday? Like, to me, and I love historical trends, like, this doesn't matter. This Arizona team is different. Am I right?
It is. Yeah, it's totally different. I'd also go back to I want to point this out, and this to some people may think is a cop out, but luck is a huge factor in the NCAA tournament. It just is. Luck is a factor. Who you play, the seeding that teams have. I go back to Tommy's first year. 5 years ago, Tommy was a 1 seed and had to play Houston the Sweet 16. First of all, he had some sick players. His point guard was out. And I don't know if anybody realizes this that bothered to, make fun of Arizona getting manhandled by Houston that year. Arizona, or let me say it differently. Houston finished the year number 2 in KenPom,
Mm-hmm.
number 2 in the country, and they were a 5 seed.
Yep.
And I think that leads me to another point I want to make, which is interesting to me. There's been this talk about now the mid-majors and the Cinderellas kind of being out because of NIL and, the big programs scooping up guys like Del Orso. And I do believe there's some truth to that. We've seen the trend now 2 years in a row, and I think there's, you just look at it kind of objectively and even subjectively, and it seems like it makes sense. The other thing that's happened because of KenPom and these metric sites is the committee can get the seeding right, because the seeding is super critical to teams and how they go through the tournament. And back 5 years ago, it was a joke that the committee had Houston as a 5 seed in San Antonio. They should have been in the Final Four playing Arizona as a 1 or 2 seed. Yep. And so I just want to point that out, that I do think now one of the reasons, like I said, I just think the seeding is become a science as much as it used to be. A lot of this used to be an art.
Okay. I mean, and I think that's a great point. Now, Arizona is playing a 4 seed on Thursday night. And I think personally that the matchup against Arkansas benefits Arizona a million times better than we had it, as you referenced, with Houston in 2021. In your opinion, what have you seen of Arkansas? And should Arizona fans be, how, like on a 1 to 10 scale, how worried would you be about this game?
I think it's like almost every Sweet 16 game out there, right? Whoever's playing in it. Take every single team that's the favorite in the Sweet 16. They're playing a quality opponent that can beat them. Arkansas, first of all, Arkansas is going to have the best player on the court for 38 minutes of the game, probably. That's just is what it is. He's an incredible point guard, Acuff. In fact, you know what's incredible about Arkansas, and you guys know I love KenPom stats. They are number 1 in the country in least amount of turnover percentage. Number 1, because the ball's in Acuff's hand all the time. He's incredible at it. And there's some super interesting stats about this game, but I'll break it down. To me, I really just break it down to 2 things. I think Arizona's defense is just much better than Arkansas's defense if you take every single day as it is. And I do believe that Arizona is just a better rebounding team than Arkansas. Those are the 2 statistics I think are the ones that to me tell me that Arizona wins most of these games. They played 10 times, though. Arizona's not going to win 10 out of 10. And I don't think any other team in the Sweet 16 would win 10 out of 10. I mean, it just isn't going to happen. And so, but, some fun stats. Arkansas, 17 in tempo. This is going to be a fun, fast, offensive game. And again, Cal can coach. Like, he's a legit coach, man. He doesn't just recruit. He's always been a good coach. But I do think Arizona's rebounding. The other thing too, interesting, Arkansas, number 10 in the nation in 3-point percentage. That's a really fascinating stat, but they're number 316 in the nation in 3-point attempts per field goal attempt. And as we know, Arizona's almost dead last in that stat. I think they're 363. So both teams, Arkansas at a higher rate can shoot the heck out of it, but they don't shoot a ton of them. That'll be interesting to see strategically. Do they shoot a lot more of them Thursday?
Yeah, and will they have to, considering how much of a presence Arizona has inside?
Yeah,
definitely something to watch. All right, so 2 questions for you. So we'll play a hypothetical game, even though I hate looking forward, and I know Arizona's not. But if it's Arizona and Purdue, if Arizona gets past Arkansas, Purdue gets past Texas, and we'll talk about Texas in a second. Does the matchup favor Arizona as much as you think it does with Arkansas, or do you think that'd be even more of a battle?
It's a different battle. I think Purdue's a little better than Arkansas, not by much. Arkansas is much more athletic and big, and can face Arizona face to face in terms of the athleticism. I don't think they haven't been this season as connected as Arizona and just complete a team. That's why their defensive stats are down. Now look, they've won 7 in a row. They're playing well. Yeah. So that's that. But Purdue, because of the sort of continuity they have, the older players that have been in the program, Cal's got, guys, typical kind of Kentucky. You got the best freshman, one of the top three freshmen in the country. Purdue's got more. I mean, Braden Smith's been there how long? Is his fourth year, right? Um, I think it's his fourth year, right, for Purdue. Is that his name? Did I get the, maybe I said his name
Yeah,
wrong.
Braden Smith. Yep.
Yeah, Braden Smith.
Yep.
I think it's his fourth year at Purdue. He's already been in a title game at least once. So I mean, they've got so much more continuity. I think their kind of organization, their sort of like how they're connected is going to be a lot tighter and really difficult if Arizona plays them, just the way they're coached and connected. Athletically, Arizona's better.
All right, last question for you, Matt. When Eric and I looked over all the possible scenarios in the West region, one that we did not talk about because we did not think it was possible was Arizona going up against Sean Miller in Texas in the Elite Eight. We're one game away from it happening from both teams. Of course, it's not likely that both are going to win. But if it were to happen, I mean, just the subplot of that game, that's got to be a talking point. And then how do you think Arizona matches up?
Yeah, it was going to, I mean, I agree with you. I never thought that was even possible when you think of them as a play-in game. I like Sean Miller. I've always liked him. I've always been good friends with him. I played against him. So, I don't view that as like, it is a subplot. It's something for sure. But I view it so much more as Arizona just trying to get to the Final Four than Sean trying to get there, right?
Yeah. I just tell you as a cynic, Matt, like the ultimate kick in the crotch would be to see Sean Miller finally get there at Arizona's expense. I'm just saying.
No, I hear you. But I look, and again, if Texas is playing awesome, they could get there. I don't think they're going to beat Arizona. I just don't think they would. But Sean's a hell of a tournament coach. What people forget, these revisionist history guys forget, is kind of living in the moment, right? What do they call it? Prisoner of the moment. And Sean's last few years at Arizona, they struggled. They were bad in the tournament. He lost
a cloud over their heads too with the FBI.
They had a cloud over their head. They got bombed by Buffalo. They got completely destroyed, or they got out-toughed by Wichita State. But up until that time, Sean Miller was like the all-time greatest coach in the tournament when he was a better seed than the team he played. I mean, there was a stat at some point. He was like 15-2 or something.
First one he lost was against Wisconsin in the
right. I mean, maybe he was 16-1.
I remember that stat. Yep.
Yeah, he's a phenomenal tournament coach. And you guys probably saw the media thing at halftime of the game against who they just beat,
Gonzaga.
That was typical Sean, and he's an emotional guy, can get his team together. Now again, I think if you're Arizona, you'd like that matchup because Sean's going to have better teams in the next few years than he has this year.
Yeah, true. You're on mute, Eric.
I always do that. Matt, as I always like to put you on the spot, who wins the West region?
I think Arizona does. I like where they're at. I like how they're playing. I like how he coaches this team. They have all the pieces. I like just watching them. When I watched them Friday and Sunday, I just kind of like their demeanor. And I think they'll come out with a little more zip on Thursday than they did Sunday. That second game is just hard, man. It's a hard game. And it's a quick turnaround though for them. That is a quick turnaround. And but I think they'll be good. I like how they're playing, and I think they win both.
Do you think it's going to be Arizona against Purdue in the Elite Eight?
Yeah.
If you were to guess the spread by how many Arizona would win by both games, what would you put it at?
I'd say 10 and 5. 10 and 4. 10-4, good buddy.
I'll take it.
Shane, I hope you're listening. I hope you heard what Matt said. All right, I got one more for you. You got to see St. John's in person in San Diego. Do you think they will beat Duke?
I'm calling it. Yeah, I think they will.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
You know why? They're so tough. That's the immediate thing that stood out to me, how tough they were and how hard they played. And Kansas, as we know, Bill Self plays, his teams play hard. And they out-willed them in that game. And Kansas, to me, was more talented, but they had more will. And Kansas all year has just, Bill Self is I love him, and he just has not been able to put his finger on this team, the right way, how he usually does. But yeah, I'm with you. I think St. John's wins.
Are
That's
all of your Final Four teams still in it, Matt?
Yeah, yeah. I think I had Michigan, Duke, Arizona. I think I won't. I'm trying to remember the other region. Could it have been Illinois?
Houston or
Illinois,
Illinois?
Houston, or Florida.
I had Illinois in the other region
Okay.
Interesting.
because
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
just thought their offense, number one offense in the country, or number two. I think Purdue's number one right now.
Yep.
But I just thought Houston was the worst of the four seeds, and so I thought either Houston or Illinois would beat them.
If you could revise it now, knowing, after seeing St. John's and you think they beat Duke, who makes the Final Four?
Michigan State,
Interesting.
because I think Michigan. Who does Michigan State play?
UConn,
they
who
got
I picked.
UConn.
UConn was my pick to go to the Final Four.
I think whoever wins that game goes to the Final Four,
Okay.
and I think it's going to be Michigan State. But I could see you. I think it's a pick 'em game. Who do you guys have?
I have UConn, Houston, Arizona, and Michigan. And I
Okay.
think the winner of Arizona, Michigan wins the national championship. Shane?
I got Michigan, Duke, Houston, Purdue.
I want to ask you one more thing as a former player, and this is nothing Arizona related. Todd Golden of Florida said he wanted to foul up 2 with 8 seconds left, and see what happens, see if Iowa could make it, so they wouldn't get a 3 off. Is that sensical or ridiculous?
Well, I mean, I did lose a game when we were up 2-1, but no, I would not do that. I don't know
Yeah,
why. Is that what he did do that, or said he wanted to?
he said he wanted to,
Yeah,
and yeah, he didn't do it. I mean,
and
obviously
they
they tried to foul and missed.
and they hit a three to win it.
Yep.
Man, I mean, I wouldn't do it statistically. Like I can't ever imagine doing it.
Yeah.
But I remember one time as a player, we had a team that stalled, and I told Lute I wanted to play the players from the other side. I wanted to actually, you guard a player between you and the rim, you're between the player and the basket. I wanted to get behind them to force them to the rim, and so they had to shoot.
That's amazing.
Lute didn't like that suggestion. So sometimes I understand like wild suggestions, but I would not do that. No.
And there you have it, a therapy session with Mr. Triple Double, Matt Muehlebach. Shane, I hope you're paying attention for our last segment. Matt, as always, thanks for joining us.
Fellas, I appreciate it. Have a blast watching this week.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
For the final segment of our show, Shane, it's time to bring on a true expert to make picks with us and maybe to talk some sense into you, I hope. It is Brian Rauf from Basket Review. He'll tell us more about Basket Review as we, later in the segment. Brian, welcome to the show. First time we've had you. Are you sticking with Arizona right now to win it all? Do you feel confident that our Wildcats are going to get it done?
I do. I know things got a little shaky for a little bit in the game against Utah State, and could be some reason maybe to be concerned there, but I'm still sticking with them. And I think you saw how they were able to recover in that game, dominance on the glass. You saw Bradley and Burris hit some big shots that you want them to hit in big spots. I'm still rolling with Arizona.
What's been, Brian, the biggest surprise of this tournament so far? I know there haven't been a ton of them. There have been some very good games, but anything in particular in any side of the bracket that surprised you?
Two things. I'm surprised that Texas suddenly became a top 25 defense when they were 125 during the regular season.
Yeah.
Like that's a team that's had talent and just hasn't been able to put it all together, particularly defensively. So suddenly they do, and you're kind of seeing the results of that. The biggest shocker to me, though, was Iowa's win over Florida. Like, I think that's obviously the most monumental upset, given the way Florida had played the last 3 months or so. of the season. And Iowa, for as good of a job as Ben McCollum has done, and as good as Bennett Sturts is and that team, they had not had a lot of like consistent success against the top teams in the country. They had showed themselves to be a tournament caliber team, but not like an elite team, right? And so to not just beat Florida, but control the game for majority of the game the way they did, I thought was surprising and pretty telling. I said this on the episode of Weekend Under Review with Matthew Winnick that we did. The Vanderbilt loss in the SEC tournament for Florida maybe should have given us some sign that Florida kind of struggles with these smaller teams that kind of mitigate the size advantage they have and the advantage on the inside on the glass. It's easy to see that in retrospect now that we have 2 data points of that happening in pretty quick succession. But that's something with this Florida team that was a flaw that just nobody was able to expose for the better part of the SEC schedule.
Brian, I'm struggling with one thing here. We're seeing that Arkansas goes and beats a High Point team, which let's just say didn't have a ton of expectations nor popularity nationally. They won by 6. Arizona beat Utah State, who won the Mountain West regular season and conference tournament championships, and they won by 12. Yet everybody's telling you this week how good Arkansas is and how Arizona is not going to cover the spread and may not win the game outright. Why are people this delusional?
I don't know if it's delusional. Question. I don't know if it's delusional, but I think Arkansas has the name recognition of John Calipari, right? You know the names because of the talent and the pedigree, whether it's from recruiting classes and the 5 stars or guys like Trevon Brazile and Nick Pringle who've been around college basketball for a while. Like we kind of know the names. And Darius Acuff, through the SEC tournament to the first couple rounds of the NCAA tournament here, has been playing as well as anybody in the country and has the potential to go on one of these like all-time runs, right? And with how flashy they are offensively. You saw all the alley-oops in the game against Hawaii. You saw them attack the rim a good bit against High Point as well. That's the stuff that resonates with people. The casual fan, that's stuff they see and get excited about, right? So that there's a lot of things there that warrant the praise and warrant the attention. They got to back it up defensively because that's been a real issue for them. But there's a lot of flash there, and there's enough substance behind it to make it real.
Let's go around the horn here before we get to the West region. Brian, who's going to win the East?
I think St. John's.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know. I think this is the worst possible matchup for Duke at this time because no Caleb Foster. You want to have your experienced veteran point guard against a team like St. John's with the pressure they play defensively. Caden Boozer has played really well the last couple of games. I think you become much more excited about what he can be than the inconsistencies he showed during the regular season. But if that's your only ball handler against St. John's, like that, St. John's is going to try and feast in that. Couple that with the fact St. John's front court has the size to try and, at least on paper, handle Cam Boozer and the size that Duke has. I think you could see things swing that way in that game. But I think the winner of that game ultimately comes out of the region.
Shane, what do you say?
Yeah, I know St. John's is a trendy pick. That's kind of one of the reasons why I still feel good about Duke. I know they're shorthanded. I feel like a lot of times, like when almost everyone's picking for the upset and it seems bold, all of a sudden, it's not so bold. I know it may sound like lazy reasoning, but I'm going to stick with Duke. I think that they still have. I mean, with Boozer in there, I still think they have enough talent to get to the Final Four.
And I may be crazy with this pick. I like UConn. Danny Hurley in the tournament is just an incredible tournament coach. I think he's like against the spread. He's like only has 1 loss, and it was the first round against Winthrop, something like that. It was something crazy. Brian, you may know the stats, like 16-1 or something like that, where he's just incredible.
It was it was like one of his first tournaments with UConn.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard to pick against. All right, how about the South? Florida is out, as you discussed. Who you got to win the South?
I have Illinois. Same kind of thing where I think the winner of Illinois-Houston is going to eventually come out of there. And it's tough to pick against Houston in Houston. But Houston has been very un-Houston-like for majority of the season. They've been able to overcome throughout Kelvin Sampson's tenure, the offensive droughts they go through because they've been so good defensively and so good on the glass. This year's team is good in both of those areas, but they're not Houston level good, right? They're better offensively, but they still go through some of those stretches. Illinois, what they can do offensively is eye-popping. It's as good as anybody in the country. It's why they have one of the best offensive ratings in KenPom history, if not I know it has been the best rating in KenPom history for majority of the season. I don't know where it sits currently in that mold. I would expect that to be a close game, but I think I trust Illinois a little bit more right now than I do Houston, because Houston, again, it feels weird to say this about Houston, has a smaller margin for error. And in a coin flip game, I'm going to go with the team that maybe has a little bit more margin for error.
Shane, you and I are going to stick with the Cougars, correct?
That's correct. Yeah. And I admit I got Big 12 bias, but I mean, the Kelvin Sampson's teams are just built for March. And I think they're the best team left standing in that region. I think the Houston, Illinois winner goes to the Final Four, which is not a big, a massive, shocking prediction, but I'm gonna roll with the Cougs.
I can't pick Kylan Boswell in a big game either. So there you have it. That's how about in the Midwest region, Michigan? We all together with Michigan here that we think, Brian, you with Michigan here?
I had Iowa State when the bracket came out, but Joshua Jefferson's injury, I think, throws it out the window. I think Iowa State, if they can force turnovers, so they can limit Michigan's 3-point success, which is what Iowa State does, then I think they have a chance if they were to get in that game. But Jefferson's injury makes that far, far less likely.
Shane, Michigan?
Yeah, we'll go with Michigan. I agree. I think Iowa State has some bad injury luck. I was tempted to take the Cyclones, but I got Michigan winning the whole thing, so I'm going to stick with them.
All right, Brian, the line is down on Thursday night. Arizona is a 7.5-point favorite against Arkansas. Where do you stand? How many first of all, will the Wildcats win? And if so, by how many points?
The Wildcats will win. I'm going to say by about 12.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. And why? Why do you make that pick?
I think this is where the Arkansas defense really comes into play and becomes a major talking point in a way that it hasn't been because of how shiny the offense has been, and much more fun to talk about that. But the defense has been a concern with them all season long. And as good as Acuff is offensively, defensively, you can make the case he's one of the worst defenders in the country. Some of that is because he's preserving his energy for the offensive end and different things like that. But he is not good. And with the defenders individually, Arizona can throw at him. There's going to be a lot of Jaden Bradley on him. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of Karchenkov on him as well. They can mix some matchups there and make things difficult for him, give him different looks depending on what's working and what's not. I think that's going to throw, I don't want to say a wrench in Arkansas's offense, but make things a little bit more difficult, make them a little bit more inefficient than they have been. Couple that with what I would expect to be an Arizona team that can take advantage of some Arkansas's defensive deficiencies. I would take Arizona more comfortably than they probably should win by.
All right, fair enough. Now, I think, listen, I don't think that Arkansas's defense is going to have an answer for Arizona's potent offense. I think, watching the Razorbacks struggle against High Point, who was in the game until the final minutes, High Point is not Utah State, in my opinion. I thought, Shane, you and I talked about it earlier. I thought Jared Calhoun outcoached Tommy Lloyd in that game. John Calipari is a phenomenal coach. I do not think Tommy Lloyd will get seriously outcoached like he was the last game. And Arizona still won by 12. Arizona 89, Arkansas 76, Wildcats by 13. All right, Shane, give us some good news at least for this game.
No, and like I said earlier, I think it's more about players this time of year than the coaches. I really do, especially later than you get in the tournament. John Calipari is an excellent coach, but I think Darius Acuff could put up 30, maybe 35, but I mean, if Arizona shuts down everyone else, they pound the glass, they get to the free throw line like they did against Utah State, and they're respectable enough from 3-point range. I think they find a way to win. There's a lot of interesting betting nuggets on this game. A lot that say Arkansas is going to cover, and some that say Arizona is going to at least win, if not cover. I tend to think that it's going to be closer than we'd like. I think Arizona wins by 6, so they don't cover, but I do think they move on.
All right. So if Arizona was to make it to the game on Saturday, they would probably play Purdue. I think we all would agree with that. I'm going to give my pick first, and I'm going to say Brian for last on this one.
Okay.
I think if Arizona plays Purdue, it's a game that obviously is concerning. Purdue is number 1 in the country in the preseason. They have veteran guards, but I think in the interior, Arizona will dominate. And I think the Mo Krivas, Tobe Awaka, Koa Pete trio is too much for Purdue to handle. Arizona 79, Purdue 71. Throw out the cynicism. Arizona is finally going to the Final Four for the first time in 25 years. Shane, you're up next.
My picks going into the tournament were the same picks I made so far: Duke, Michigan, Houston, and Purdue. My concern about Purdue is their experience. I think that really matters this time of year. And look, they were the number one ranked team in the country, not just opening week, but for several weeks for a reason. They started out hot and they're back. So now you've got Arizona facing a 2 seed that's playing like a 1. So that does concern me. I do think if Arizona's going to win, they're going to need a big game from a guy like Tobe Awaka. If he has like a 15-15 kind of game, then all bets are off. And he may will Arizona to the win, along with, of course, the clutch shooting of Jaden Bradley, who, if Jaden Bradley is a great closer, Braden Burris has become a great setup man. He's right there as well. But again, I think the experience of Purdue will be the difference. If it's Arizona and Texas, I think Arizona wins. But I think it's going to be Arizona and Purdue, and I'm going to stick with my pick and say Purdue by 3.
Brian, I'm taking Arizona, maybe the homer pick. Shane is taking the hedge pick.
Anti-homer
hedge pick. Yes. Where do you stand with Arizona, Purdue?
There are 2 main things Purdue has struggled with this season, and particularly since the calendar flipped to 2026. It has been athletic guards that can get into the paint and teams that can beat them on the glass and kind of nullify that advantage they have on the inside with their bigs. Arizona is much more athletic on the perimeter. Arizona is bigger and much more dominant, I think, on the inside than Purdue has. All the statistics from January 1st on indicate that they've been much better rebounding team, much better finishing team at the rim, much better rim protection team than Purdue has been this season. I don't want to say that I think Arizona wins it easily because that feels disrespectful. And Purdue being on the brink of, at that point, potentially going to a Final Four in Indianapolis and everything that would entail. There's going to be some emotional weight to that as well that potentially carry Purdue. But Arizona is excellent at all the things that Purdue struggles with. Like, they're the perfect team to give Purdue problems. So I would take Arizona by double digits in that game.
Wow. Okay. And there you have it. Shane, there's the logic.
No, doesn't make me feel any better. I appreciate it. Look, I appreciate it. We'll see what happens. I'll admit, Brian, like I told Fran Fraschilla last week, it's PTSD. It's been a quarter century for us Wildcats.
Yeah.
I'll believe it when I see it. But look, it's not just that. I think Purdue is going to be a tough matchup if it happens. But I agree it's a game Arizona should win. But there's been a lot of games over the last quarter century that Arizona should have won in the tournament and ultimately did not.
But the same thing could be said about Purdue.
That's very true.
That's why we call them Purdue.
Touche.
Yes. That's why we call them Purdue. Brian, we can follow you on X at BRauf33, BRAUF33 for those of you who are listening and want to check that out. But Brian, where can everybody find your work and kind of tell us, what we need to be following and where we can find you?
Yeah, it's over at basketunderreview.com. We got a lot of great stuff on the website. We have the tournament covered from every angle. We just did Sweet 16 reset where we had all of our writers who previewed each individual region before the tournament started. Kind of reset for each individual region. And again, dive into storylines, stats that matter, what may dictate who advances to the Elite Eight, advances to the Final Four. All that's up there. We got a slew of in-depth features coming out as well. Some are already up from over the weekend. Others are coming out this week in preparation for this weekend's games. And I believe a vast majority of everything that's coming out is also free. There are some things that are premium content on the website that are behind the paywall at basketunderreview.com, which I highly suggest you subscribe to. You also get access to the Discord, which is where Chili Donovan has all of his scoops, which are
cool, very
nice this time of year to have, very informative. So you get that in addition to the premium content, but a lot, I would say a vast majority of our tournament stuff that is up at basketunderreview.com is free to read.
Do you have any Arizona scoops that you would just kind of tease going forward after? Obviously, we're all focused on this weekend, but the next period with roster movement could be interesting. And I guess the other question is, should we have to worry about Tommy Lloyd, going to UNC or anywhere else?
I think Tommy Lloyd's name will be mentioned with the UNC stuff. Let's put it this way. I think he is high on UNC's list, and I do not think it's going to get to him. I don't think it's going to be his choice to make. I think somebody ahead of him who may not be coaching in college right now will end up getting that gig.
Billy Donovan. There you go. That'd be my guess as of right now. Brian, great stuff. Thank you so much for joining us. We'd love to have you on again. Great content. Check out Basket Under Review and on X, Basket_review, if I'm correct.
Yep.
There you go.
Basket_review. Yep.
For Brian Rauf, Matt Muehlebach in the last segment, always great to talk to him. Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, especially this weekend, bear down.